I was 19 when I first saw Arjun at the University of Delhi. It was a warm September morning in 2023, and the North Campus was alive with the buzz of a new academic year. I was in my second year, studying English literature at Miranda House, one of the most prestigious colleges in the university. The air was thick with the scent of fresh rain and jasmine, the gardens near the library bursting with pink and orange bougainvillea that climbed the old stone walls. I was rushing to my first class, my dupatta flapping in the humid breeze, clutching my worn copy of Pride and Prejudice and a notebook filled with half-written poems. My sandals slapped against the pavement, and I was so focused on not being late that I didn't see him until I bumped into him, literally. Books tumbled to the ground, papers scattered across the stone path like fallen leaves, and I mumbled a flustered apology, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. He crouched down to help, his movements calm and deliberate, a faint smile playing on his lips. "No problem," he said, picking up my book and glancing at the cover. "Good book? I'm Arjun, by the way." His voice was soft but confident, carrying a hint of a Rajasthani accent that made my heart skip. He wore a deep blue kurta, neatly pressed, with a silver ring glinting on his finger. His dark eyes sparkled with kindness and a touch of mischief, and his hair was slightly tousled by the morning breeze. I managed to stammer, "I'm Priya," before grabbing my things and hurrying off, my heart racing for reasons I couldn't quite name. I glanced back once, and he was still standing there, watching me with that same quiet smile, his hands in his pockets. That was the start of something I never expected. The University of Delhi is a world of its own, sprawling across the city with thousands of students from every corner of India, each bringing their own dreams, languages, and stories. The North Campus, where Miranda House and St. Stephen's College sit, hums with life. Students debating politics over chai in the canteen, professors lecturing under ancient banyan trees, and the constant honk of auto rickshaws just beyond the iron gates. I thought I'd never see Arjun again in that sea of faces, but fate had other plans. He was in his third year, studying economics at St. Stephen's just across the campus. I started noticing him everywhere. At the canteen where he'd sit with his friends laughing loudly over steaming glasses of cutting chai and plates of crispy samosas. At the library where he'd pore over thick economics textbooks, his brow furrowed in concentration. Even at the Vishwavidyalaya metro station, where he'd wave from a distance, his smile bright against the dusty evening sky. At first, I pretended not to care. I'd wave back, shyly, then turn to my friends, giggling over our plates of rajma chawal or spicy pakoras drizzled with green chutney. My best friend, Neha, noticed first. "Priya, that boy's always looking at you," she teased, nudging me as we sat under the shade of a neem tree sipping nimbu pani from plastic cups. "He's cute, but be careful, your amma will lose it if she hears you're distracted." She was right. I was raised in a middle-class family in South Delhi where studies were everything. My father, a bank manager with a stern but kind demeanor, and my mother, a homemaker who filled our home with the aroma of dal and rotis, had high hopes for me. They wanted me to graduate with honors, maybe become a teacher, or prepare for the civil services exam. Dating wasn't forbidden, but it was delicate. In Indian culture, love isn't just about two people. It's about families, respect, and timing. A boy and girls seen together too often could spark gossip, and I wasn't ready for the whispers that followed couples on campus. But Arjun was different. He wasn't like the loud boys who showed off with bikes or flirted openly at the canteen, tossing cheesy lines to impress girls. He was quiet, respectful, and thoughtful, with a warmth that made me feel seen in a way I'd never felt before. One day, during the annual fest at Miranda House called Tempest, I saw him at a poetry reading event I'd signed up for. The stage was small, decorated with marigold garlands and fairy lights, the air heavy with the scent of incense and roasted corn from nearby stalls. I was nervous, my hands trembling as I stepped up to recite a poem I had written about the monsoon and unrequited love. My voice wavered at first, but I let the words flow, painting images of rain-soaked streets, dripping banyan leaves, and hearts heavy with longing. When I finished, my legs wobbly, I stepped down to polite applause. Arjun was there, standing near the front, clapping with a grin that lit up his face. "That was beautiful, Priya," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "You write like you've lived 100 lives." I laughed, my nerves easing, and his words stayed with me, tucked away like a secret treasure in my heart. That evening, we talked for hours under the fest's twinkling lights. The air smelled of chaat, spicy pani puri, tangy aloo tikki, and sweet jalebis, and Qawwali music floated from a nearby stage, soulful and haunting. He told me about his childhood in Jaipur, where he'd climbed the hills near Amber Fort with his cousins, chasing kites and eating spicy kachoris from street vendors. His eyes lit up when he spoke of his family's small textile business, how his father worked late nights to keep it running, checking the quality of silk by its sheen. I shared my dream of writing a novel inspired by my grandmother's stories about her village in Uttar Pradesh, where women wove tales under starlit skies. I admitted my fear of disappointing my parents, who saw literature as a risky path compared to a stable job like teaching. Arjun listened, really listened, nodding as if every word mattered. We sipped Nimbu Pani, careful not to stand too close, aware of the eyes around us, students, vendors, even the occasional professor passing by. In India, public displays of affection are rare, especially on a campus where aunties, security guards, and faculty might gossip. But our conversation felt like a dance, careful, respectful, but full of promise. Arjun started finding small ways to spend time with me, each gesture wrapped in the quiet charm of Indian courtship. He'd wait outside my lecture hall with a cup of cutting chai from the campus stall, steam rising from the small glass as he handed it to me. "I was just passing by," he'd say, but I knew he wasn't. His classes were on the other side of campus, near the economics department. Once he brought me a notebook with a cover painted like a Mughal miniature, all intricate flowers and gold patterns. "For your poems," he said, his eyes soft and shy. I blushed, tucking it into my bag, my fingers brushing the smooth cover. He never held my hand or stood too close, but his actions spoke louder than words. In our culture, love is often shown through care. Remembering someone's favorite sweet, carrying their heavy books, or waiting an extra hour just to walk them to the metro. One evening, during Diwali in November 2023, he invited me to a cultural event at St. Stephen's. I spent hours choosing my outfit, finally settling on a green salwar kameez with golden embroidery. My hair braided with jasmine flowers as my mother insisted for festivals. Amma always said jasmine brought good fortune, and I wanted all the luck I could get. The campus glowed with hundreds of clay diyas, their tiny flames flickering in the cool night air. Arjun was waiting at the college gate, holding two diyas he'd made himself, their surfaces etched with simple floral designs. "For good luck," he said, handing me one. Our fingers brushed the warm clay as we lit them together, the flame casting soft shadows on his face. Students sang bhajans, their voices rising in harmony, and the smell of laddus and jalebis filled the air. Arjun's friends joined us, teasing him about how he was always talking about Priya. I pretended not to hear, hiding my smile behind my dupatta, but my heart fluttered like a kite caught in a breeze. We started meeting more often, study sessions in the library where we'd share notes and steal glances over piles of books, walks around India Gate, eating kulfi from street vendors and dodging selfie-taking tourists. Quick chats at the Vishwavidyalaya metro station where he'd make sure I got on the right train home. He told me stories of his family's textile shop in Jaipur, how his father taught him to check the quality of silk by its sheen and feel. I shared how I'd sneak books under my blanket at night, reading Jane Austen or Kamala Das while my parents thought I was asleep. We laughed easily, but there was always a line we didn't cross. Holding hands or being too open wasn't our way, not yet. Indian traditions taught us patience, and we followed them, letting our bond grow slowly like a mango tree taking root. Festivals became our excuse to meet, each one weaving us closer. During Holi in March 2024, we joined a campus celebration organized by the Student Union. The air was thick with colored powder, red, blue, green, swirling around us as students danced to Bollywood songs blaring from speakers. Arjun smeared red gulal on my cheeks, his fingers gentle but playful, and laughed as I chased him with a handful of blue powder. "You look like a rainbow," he teased, dodging my aim. Our friends cheered, splashing water and sharing plates of gujia, the sweet dumplings a holy staple. It was playful, but even then, we kept a respectful distance, aware of the crowd and the unspoken rules of our culture. At Rakhi, I tied a Rakhi on his wrist, not as a sister, but as a promise of care, a tradition some couples follow before marriage. The Rakhi was red and gold, woven by my mother, and Arjun's eyes softened as I tied it. In return, he gave me a small silver bracelet, saying, "For my poet." I slipped it into my pocket, knowing Amma would ask questions if she saw it, but I wore it in secret, feeling its weight against my wrist. During Navratri in October 2023, we attended a Garba night at Miranda House. The campus transformed with colorful lights and students dressed in vibrant chania cholis and kurtas. I wore a red lehenga with mirror work, my mother's old dupatta draped over my shoulder, its embroidery catching the light. Arjun, in a cream kurta, joined me in the dance circle, though he admitted he was terrible at Garba. We spun under the stars, clapping to the rhythmic beat of dandiya sticks, laughing when he tripped over his own feet. "You're better at economics than dancing," I teased, and he grinned, pretending to bow. The night felt magical, the music and laughter blending with the scent of incense and roses. Later we sat on the grass, eating kheer from paper bowls, talking about our dreams. He wanted to modernize his family's business, maybe open a store in Delhi. I confessed my fear of failing as a writer, of my stories never finding a home. They will, he said, his voice steady. Your words have a home in me already. Ganesh Chaturthi brought us closer still. In September 2024, we visited a pandal on campus where a large idol of Ganesha sat adorned with flowers and gold jewelry. Students offered modaks, the sweet dumplings Ganesha loves, and we joined in, placing our offerings at the idol's feet. Arjun whispered a prayer for success in his exams, and I prayed for courage to share my poems with the world. Afterward, we walked through the campus, the air filled with the sound of aarti bells and the smell of coconut and jaggery. Arjun bought me a small Ganesha pendant, saying, "For new beginnings." I wore it under my kurti, a secret token of our growing bond.
Onam, the Kerala Harvests Festival, was another highlight. A friend from Miranda House, Lakshmi, invited us to a cultural event where students performed traditional dances like Kathagali and Mohiniyattam. The campus was decorated with pukalams, intricate flower rangolis, their petals bright against the ground. We shared a sadhya, a feast served on banana leaves, with dishes like aviyal, sambar, and payasam. Arjun struggled with eating by hand, his fingers sticky with rice, and I laughed, showing him how to scoop it properly. "You're learning," I said, and he grinned, saying, "Only for you." The event felt like a celebration of India's diversity, and our love felt like part of that tapestry, woven with shared moments and mutual respect.
6 months passed like a dream. By March 2024, the campus was alive with spring, the bougainvillea blooming in vibrant bursts, the air warm and fragrant with mango blossoms. Arjun and I were close, but we hadn't defined our relationship. In India, love comes with expectations. Families get involved early, especially if things turn serious. I wasn't sure what Arjun wanted, and I was too shy to ask. Neha kept teasing, "He's serious, Priya. Boys don't spend this much time unless they mean it." I wanted to believe her, but doubt lingered. What if he was just being friendly? What if his parents disapproved of me, a girl who dreamed of writing instead of a practical career like medicine or engineering? One Sunday, Arjun called, his voice different, nervous, almost formal. "Priya, can we meet at the coffee shop near Kamla Nagar? I want to talk about something." My stomach twisted. Was he ending things? Had his parents found out? I dressed simply in a cream kurti, my hands shaking as I took an auto rickshaw to the cafe. The ride was bumpy, the driver weaving through Delhi's chaotic traffic, honking at stray cows and scooters. When I arrived, Arjun was there. But he wasn't alone. A man and woman sat with him, both in their 50s, dressed traditionally, her in a maroon sari with a gold border, him in a beige kurta pajama. My heart stopped. They were his parents. Arjun stood, smiling but tense, his hands fidgeting. "Priya, this is my Amma and Papa." I froze, my hands sweaty, my mind racing. Meeting parents in India is a big step. It often means the boy is thinking of marriage or at least a serious commitment. I bowed slightly, touching their feet as a sign of respect, a gesture we offer elders in our culture. My dupatta slipped and I fumbled to fix it, my cheeks burning. Mrs. Sharma smiled warmly, her eyes kind.
Arjun has told us so much about you. You're studying English, yes? Mr. Sharma nodded, his gaze steady but not unkind. Sit down, beta, he said, using the affectionate term for child. We sat at a small table, the cafe buzzing with students and the smell of brewing coffee. Over cups of filter coffee and plates of samosas, they asked about my family, my studies, and my hobbies. Mrs. Sharma shared stories of Arjun's childhood in Jaipur, how he'd once tried to sell his sister's dolls to buy cricket gear, making me laugh despite my nerves. Mr. Sharma asked about my parents' jobs, Papa at the bank, Amma at home, and whether I liked Jaipur. He mentioned their family's Rajput background, and I nodded, relieved that we shared the same caste, as it often matters in Indian marriages. It felt like an interview, but gentle, their questions wrapped in warmth. In India, parents look at compatibility, not just of the couple, but of families, values, and lifestyles. I worried they'd find my love for writing frivolous, but Mrs. Sharma seemed intrigued, asking if I'd ever published anything. I shyly admitted I hadn't, but I hoped to. Arjun barely spoke, but his eyes kept meeting mine, steady and reassuring, like a silent promise. After an hour, his parents stood to leave, saying they'd like to meet my family soon. I was stunned, my mind spinning. Arjun, what's happening? I asked when we were alone, my voice barely above a whisper. He took a deep breath, his hands still fidgeting. Priya, I've liked you since that day you dropped your books. I told my parents because I want to be with you, not just now, but always. My heart pounded so loudly I thought he'd hear it. He wasn't proposing, not yet, but in our culture, this was a promise, a step toward a future together. I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak, and he smiled, relief washing over his face.
The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Arjun's parents called mine, and soon our families arranged to meet at my house in South Delhi. Amma was nervous, cleaning every corner of our modest flat until it sparkled. She cooked a feast: dal makhani, paneer tikka, aloo gobi, vegetable pulao, and gulab jamun for dessert, following the tradition of welcoming guests with abundance. Papa wore his best shirt, his face serious as he greeted Mr. and Mrs. Sharma. Arjun came too, looking handsome but nervous in a white kurta, his hair neatly combed. I stayed in the kitchen with Amma at first, as is custom for daughters, helping serve chai in our best china cups and arranging snacks, samosas, pakoras, and kaju katli on silver trays. The meeting was formal but warm. Papa asked Arjun about his plans after graduation, his tone firm but fair. Arjun spoke respectfully, explaining his goal to join a bank or expand his family's textile business in Jaipur. He mentioned his good grades and internships, which impressed Papa, who valued hard work and stability. Mrs. Sharma complimented Amma's cooking, a big deal in Indian homes, and asked about my studies. I joined them later, sitting quietly on the sofa, my hands folded in my lap as they discussed our families' backgrounds. Both were Rajput, both middle class, both valued education and tradition. In India, these things matter. Families must align for a relationship to move forward. They even touched on horoscope matching, a common tradition to ensure compatibility, though Papa said it could wait. By the end, Papa nodded, saying, "He seems like a good boy, but studies come first." Amma agreed, adding, "No rush. Let's see how things go. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. It was permission to continue, carefully. After they left, Amma pulled me aside in the kitchen, her hands still dusted with flour from making rotis. "Priya, do you like him?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I nodded, blushing, my throat tight. She sighed but smiled, tucking a strand of my hair behind my ear. "He's nice, but be careful. Love is one thing, life is another." In our culture, parents guide love, ensuring it fits with duty and tradition. I understood, but I also knew Arjun was different. He respected my dreams, my family, and me. With our family's blessings, Arjun and I grew closer, though we stayed careful, mindful of the boundaries set by tradition. We studied together in the library, our books spread out on worn wooden tables, whispering about everything from Keynesian economics to Jane Austen's heroines. We attended more festivals, each one a chance to deepen our bond. During Durga Puja in October 2024, we visited a pandal near campus, a temporary temple adorned with flowers and lights. The towering idol of goddess Durga, dressed in red and gold, gleamed under the spotlights, her 10 arms holding weapons of strength. Arjun bought me a small clay idol as a keepsake, saying, "For strength like you." I smiled, tucking it into my bag, feeling its weight like a promise. We shared plates of bhog, khichdi, vegetables and sweets offered to the goddess. Sitting on mats with other students, the air filled with the sound of dhak drums. At Christmas, St. Stephen's hosted a carol night and we sat under fairy lights strung across the college lawn, singing along to Silent Night with Arjun's friends. The air was cool and I wore a shawl over my kulti, sipping hot chocolate from a paper cup. Arjun's friend Imran teased us, saying, "You two are like a Bollywood movie, but without the rain dance." We laughed, but I felt the warmth of Arjun's presence beside me, his shoulder just close enough to feel like home. These moments, steeped in India's diversity, made our love feel bigger than just us. It was part of the vibrant chaos of Delhi, of our culture, of our shared dreams. Lohri in January 2025 was another milestone. We joined a bonfire event on campus, the flames crackling as students threw sesame seeds and popcorn into the fire, a tradition for prosperity. I wore a heavy shawl over my salwar kameez, the winter chill biting my fingers. Arjun stood close, his shoulder brushing mine, the closest we'd come to breaking our careful distance. We shared revdi and gajak, sticky sesame sweets, and he whispered, "Someday we'll have our own bonfire." I knew what he meant, a home, a family, a life together. The thought warmed me more than the fire, and I smiled, tossing a handful of sesame into the flames for luck. Campus life wasn't always kind. Gossip spread like wildfire. Some girls in my hostel whispered that I was too serious about Arjun, warning that long relationships distract from studies. Once, a senior professor, Mrs. Gupta, called me aside after class. "Priya, you're bright," she said, her tone stern. "Don't let a boy change your path." I nodded, respectful, but inside I knew Arjun wasn't holding me back. He was my biggest supporter, staying up late to help me revise for exams, quizzing me on literary terms, or bringing me coffee when I pulled all-nighters in the hostel. When I got an A on a tough paper about post-colonial literature, he celebrated by treating me to chaat at a stall near Kamla Nagar. We sat on plastic stools laughing as the tangy tamarind sauce dripped on my dupatta, the vendor scolding us to eat faster. Our families grew closer too. Amma invited Arjun's parents to our home for Diwali in 2024, a year after we met. The house glowed with diyas, their flames dancing in every corner. We played Teen Patti, a card game that's a Diwali tradition, betting with coins and laughing over Papa's terrible bluffing. Mrs. Sharma taught me her recipe for Rajasthani ghevar, a sweet disc of flour and sugar syrup. Her hands patient as she showed me how to drizzle the syrup just right. Papa and Mr. Sharma bonded over cricket, debating India's chances in the World Cup, their voices rising with excitement. Seeing our families laugh together felt like a blessing, a sign that our love fit into the larger tapestry of tradition.
But challenges came, as they do in any love story. My cousin Rohan, who was like an older brother, grew protective. One evening, over dinner at home, he questioned Arjun's intentions. "Is he serious enough for marriage, Priya?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "You're young, don't rush." I defended Arjun, my voice firm, but the conversation planted a seed of doubt. In India, love isn't just about feelings. It's about commitment, family approval, and timing. I worried about what would happen if Arjun's plans took him away from Delhi, or if our families disagreed on some detail, like dowry or wedding plans, which often complicate Indian relationships. Dowry, though less common now, was still a top.
I shared my fears with Arjun one evening at Lodi Garden, where we sat under a palm tree, the air heavy with the scent of roses. "Priya," he said, his voice steady, "I'm not going anywhere. We'll do this right. Your way, our family's way." His words were a balm, and I leaned against him, just for a moment, breaking our usual careful distance. The garden was quiet and the sunset painting the sky orange, and I felt safe, like we could face anything together. By early 2025, Arjun was in his final semester, preparing for graduation and job interviews with banks in Delhi and Mumbai. I was in my third year, juggling classes and my growing ambition to publish my poems. His busyness worried me. What if he moved away? But he promised we'd make it work. "Distance doesn't scare me," he said, grinning. "I'll send you letters like an old-fashioned hero." I laughed, imagining him writing love letters like Mr. Darcy. But I knew he meant it. He'd find a way to keep us close. A misunderstanding tested us in February 2025. Arjun was stressed, missing a study session because of a last-minute interview. I waited at the library, hurt when he didn't show, and didn't answer his calls for a day. Neha urged me to talk to him, saying, "He's not perfect, Priya, but he's trying." When we met at the canteen, he apologized, explaining the interview ran late. "I should have texted," he said, his eyes earnest. "I never want to hurt you." I forgave him, realizing love meant patience, even when it was hard. We shared a plate of samosas, the tension melting away, and I felt stronger for it. In April 2025, we attended Miranda House's farewell fest, Rhapsody. The campus was alive with music, dance, and stalls selling everything from bangles to biryani.
Arjun and I performed a duet in a poetry and music event, a bold move for us. I recited a poem about love as a journey, my voice steady despite the crowd. Arjun played the guitar, a skill he'd hidden until then, his fingers strumming a soft melody that wove through my words. The crowd cheered, and for once, we didn't care about the whispers. It felt like our love was on display, not in a loud Bollywood way, but in a way that felt true, rooted in art, respect, and the quiet promises we'd made. Our families met again, this time in Jaipur, where I saw Arjun's world. His home was modest but warm, filled with the smell of rajma and the sound of his younger sister, Anjali, practicing Kathak dance, her anklets jingling. Mrs. Sharma showed me old photos of Arjun, laughing as she recounted his childhood mischief, like the time he tried to trade his bicycle for a stray puppy. Mr. Sharma took us to Amber Fort, where Arjun and I walked the stone paths, stealing glances as the sun set over the hills. Jaipur's vibrant markets, with their piles of spices, shimmering fabrics, and hawkers calling out, felt like a promise, a place we might build a life someday. My writing journey grew alongside our love. I submitted poems to a literary magazine, nervous but hopeful. When one was accepted, Arjun celebrated by taking me to Chandni Chowk, where we ate parathas at Parathe Wali Gali, the narrow lane buzzing with the smell of ghee and spices. He bought me a pair of jhumkas, silver earrings with tiny bells, saying, "For your first publication." I wore them every day, a reminder of his support. My professor, Dr. Sen, encouraged me to read at a literary fest at Ramjas College, where I presented a paper on feminist themes in Indian poetry. Arjun sat in the front row, clapping louder than anyone, his pride making me blush. Arjun's career path wasn't easy. His father wanted him to join the family business in Jaipur, but Arjun dreamed of a banking job in Delhi to stay near me. He spent late nights preparing for interviews, his eyes tired but determined. I helped him practice, reading questions from a book while he answered, his voice growing more confident. When he landed an interview with a major bank, I wrote him a poem, slipping it into his bag. He found it later, texting me, "Your words are my luck." That small gesture, rooted in our shared love for art, felt like a way of defying the pressures around us. Family pressures persisted. My uncle from Gurgaon visited and questioned my focus. "Writing is fine, Priya, but what about a real job?" he asked, his tone sharp. I explained my plan to teach while writing, but he shook his head, saying, "And this boy, will he support that?" I nodded, thinking of Arjun's encouragement, but the doubt lingered. Arjun faced pressure too. His mother suggested an arranged match with a family friend's daughter. "Just meet her," she'd said, showing him a photo. Arjun told me about it, his voice tense. I said, "No, Priya, it's you or no one." I was touched but scared. What if his parents insisted? In India, family approval is everything, and defying it can fracture relationships. But Arjun stood firm, talking to his parents calmly, explaining how we shared the same values and dreams. Slowly, they came around, especially after seeing his determination. In May 2025, we took a trip with friends to House Khas Village, a trendy spot in Delhi with cafes and ruins. We explored the old fort, its stone walls cool against the summer heat, and sat by the lake, sharing stories. Arjun told me about his first job offer, a bank in Delhi, not Mumbai, meaning he'd stay close. I hugged him, forgetting our usual restraint, and he laughed, saying, "Careful, the aunties might see." We spent the day browsing bookstores, picking out novels for each other. He chose The God of Small Things for me, saying, "It's intense like you." I picked The White Tiger for him, teasing, "For your big city dreams."
Our parents started discussing marriage more openly, though they agreed we should finish our degrees first. Amma began teaching me Rajasthani recipes like lal mas and dal bati churma, saying, "You'll need this in Jaipur." Arjun's father invited my family to a wedding in their extended family, a grand Rajasthani affair with women in heavy lehengas, men in turbans, and a feast of spicy curries, bajra roti, and sweets like malpua. Arjun and I stole moments to talk, sitting under a canopy of marigolds, imagining our own wedding someday. Simple, traditional, filled with family and love. The elders discussed horoscopes, a key step in Indian marriages, and found ours compatible, easing my fears. Dowry came up briefly, but both families agreed it wasn't necessary, a relief in a culture where such expectations can strain relationships. Now, as I write this in June 2025, our story continues, woven into the fabric of Delhi's chaotic beauty. We are not engaged, not yet, but our families talk about it casually, the way Indian parents do when they see a future. Amma teases me about learning more recipes, and Arjun's sister Anjali sends me memes about future bhabi. We are young, focused on our dreams, me to write and publish, him to build a career in finance. But we're building something together. Each chai we share, each festival we celebrate, each quiet walk through campus adds to our story. Our love isn't a Bollywood romance with grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It's slow, respectful, and rooted in the traditions that shape us. We faced gossip, family pressures, and the uncertainty of our futures, but we faced them together. Arjun is my partner, my friend, my home. In the heart of Delhi, amid the chaos of auto rickshaws, street vendors, and monsoon rains, we found something real. A love that grows like a banyan tree, deep-rooted and enduring, guided by the traditions that bind us and the dreams that set us free. Our journey didn't stop with festivals or family meetings. Each month brought new moments that strengthened our bond. During Janmashtami in August 2024, we joined a campus celebration, watching students perform a play about Krishna's life, complete with flute music and colorful costumes. Arjun whispered, "Krishna was a charmer, but I only have eyes for one girl." I blushed, nudging him to be quiet, but my heart soared. We shared plates of makan mishri, a sweet offered to Krishna, and stood in line to swing a small idol of baby Krishna in a cradle, a tradition that felt intimate despite the crowd. The night ended with us sitting on the hostel steps, talking about our childhoods, how I'd dress up as Radha for school plays, how he'd sneak extra lottos during festivals. Basant Panchami in February 2025 was another special moment. We visited a Saraswati Puja on campus, praying for wisdom and success in our studies. I wore a yellow kurti, the color of spring, and Arjun offered a lotus flower to the goddess, his head bowed in reverence. Later, we shared kheer and talked about our futures. His hope to join a bank, my dream to publish a poetry collection. "We'll make it happen," he said, his hand brushing mine for a fleeting moment. The campus was bright with marigolds and students flew kites, a tradition for the festival. Arjun tried to teach me, but my kite crashed into a tree and we laughed until our sides hurt. Eid brought us to Imran's home for a feast of biryani, kebabs and sheer khurma. We laughed over Arjun's terrible attempt at Urdu poetry, his words tumbling but honest. The warmth of Imran's family, the clink of spoons against plates, and the shared stories made our love feel universal, like it belonged to the world as much as to us. These festivals, each with its rituals and flavors, wove our love into India's cultural tapestry, grounding us in tradition while letting us dream. My writing journey grew alongside our love. I joined a campus literary club where I shared my poems with other students, my voice shaky at first but growing stronger. Arjun attended every meeting, sitting quietly in the back, his presence giving me courage. When a second poem was accepted by a magazine, he took me to Qutub Minar, where we walked among the ancient ruins, the minaret towering above us. "Your words are eternal, like this place," he said, and I felt my dreams were possible. I started a blog to share my poetry, and Arjun helped me design it, choosing a simple layout with lotus motifs. My parents, initially skeptical, began to support my writing, especially after Papa read one of my published poems and said, "It's good, beta, keep going." Arjun's career path brought its own challenges. A bank in Mumbai offered him a job, tempting but far from Delhi. He turned it down, choosing a lower paying offer in Delhi to stay near me. His father was disappointed, wanting him to take the better opportunity. But Arjun explained his choice, saying, "Priya's my future too." His mother worried about finances, but she respected his decision, especially after he promised to help the family business on weekends. I admired his sacrifice, knowing it wasn't easy. Our friends played a big role too. Neha became our biggest cheerleader, organizing group outings to keep things light. But some friends like Riya grew distant, jealous of my time with Arjun. She once confronted me in the hostel, saying, "You're throwing away your future for a boy." Her words hurt, but I stood my ground, saying he's not taking my future, he's part of it. Neha backed me up and Riya eventually apologized, but the incident reminded me how love in India is watched and judged. Extended family added pressure. My auntie in Lucknow called, warning Amma that I was too young for a serious relationship. Arjun's uncle suggested he focus on the family business instead of chasing a girl. We navigated these opinions carefully, knowing family harmony is key in our culture. Arjun invited my parents to a family function in Jaipur, a cousin's engagement, to show our commitment was serious. The event was lively, with Rajasthani folk music, women in colorful saris, and a feast of Kher Sangri and Missi Roti. My parents saw how well Arjun's family treated me, and their doubts began to fade. As summer settled over Delhi in 2025, our love grew stronger, woven into the rhythms of campus life and tradition. We studied for finals, planned our futures, and dreamed of a life together. Our parents started discussing engagement after my graduation, a year away. The elders exchanged horoscopes, confirming compatibility, and talked about a simple wedding, maybe in Delhi or Jaipur. Amma taught me more recipes, joking, "You'll be a Rajasthani bahu soon." Arjun's father gifted my parents a shawl, a gesture of goodwill. These small acts, rooted in tradition, built a bridge between our families. Our story is still unfolding, a tapestry of small moments and big dreams. We faced gossip, family pressures, and the uncertainty of our futures, but we faced them together. Arjun is my partner, my friend, my home. In the heart of Delhi, amid the chaos of auto rickshaws, street vendors, and monsoon rains, we found something real. A love that grows like a banyan tree, deep rooted and enduring, guided by the traditions that bind us and the dreams that set us free. Each festival, each chai, each poem shared between us adds to our story, a love that honors our roots and reaches for the stars.